When someone with a dismissive avoidant attachment stops contacting you, and then you finally stop contacting them too, something happens that almost nobody talks about. Not shouting. Not drama. Not closure. Just silence. A silence so strange and heavy that it feels like the world stopped spinning for a moment. Two people who once clung to each other in a broken rhythm, pulling, pushing, hurting, hoping, suddenly drop the rope at the exact same time. And what follows isn't relief. It's exposure. Because silence doesn't erase the bond. Silence exposes it. At first, the dismissive avoidant feels safe. Freed. Unpressured. They tell themselves, finally. No expectations. No emotional demands. No responsibility. They convince themselves the silence is proof they made the right choice, proof they don't care, proof they're above the connection. But the truth hits them slowly, not all at once. Because when you stop reaching out, the dynamic they relied on, the reassurance that you would always be there, disappears like smoke. And for someone who spent their whole life escaping vulnerability, that disappearance is terrifying. Avoidants don't panic when you leave. They panic when they realize you're not coming back. At first, the silence feels like victory. Then it feels like emptiness. Then it feels like a loss they can't name. They start checking their phone without realizing it. Wondering if they missed something. Wondering why you aren't breaking first. Wondering why their distance isn't pulling you closer the way it always did. They won the game, but now the prize feels like loneliness. Meanwhile, you're fighting your own battle. Because the instinct to reach out, to fix things, to keep the connection alive, it still burns in your chest. You check your notifications out of habit. You replay conversations. You tell yourself they'll message any moment now. But when the days pass and nothing comes, something inside you shifts. Pain turns into clarity. Clarity into strength. Strength into detachment. And that detachment, that quiet, steady detachment, is exactly what the avoidant had never prepared for. They were ready for your need. They were ready for your chasing. They were ready for your emotional hunger. They were not ready for your silence. And when that silence starts spreading between you like a thick fog, when the energy that once tied you to them starts loosening, they feel it in ways they can't explain. Not through logic. Through instinct. Through fear. Fear that you're moving on. Fear that they lost control. Fear that you finally see the pattern for what it is. Fear that someone else is giving you what they refuse to give. Because avoidants don't fear losing you. They fear losing the version of you that needed them. And now, with every day of silence, that version is slipping away. But the story doesn't end there. This is only the beginning of the unraveling, of their defenses, of your healing, of the truth hidden underneath both your wounds. And the deeper the silence goes, the more brutally it reveals what the connection really was. The longer the silence stretches, the more something unexpected begins to happen inside the dismissive avoidant. Not regret, not yet. Regret is too honest, too raw for them. What they feel first is irritation. A strange, prickling frustration that shouldn't exist because they're the one who pulled away. But suddenly they're restless. Distracted. Uneasy. They catch themselves thinking about you in moments they swore they'd moved on. While brushing their teeth. While scrolling at night. While lying awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering why the quiet feels heavier than the relationship ever did. Avoidants don't miss you like normal people. They miss your energy. Your effort. Your consistent presence that made them feel safe while they pretended they didn't need anyone. And now? All that energy is gone. The silence becomes a mirror they can't escape. And in that mirror, they start seeing something they've denied for years. They pushed away the very thing they wanted. But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of facing these feelings directly, the avoidant tries to rationalize them away. I'm just tired. I'm just stressed. It wasn't a big deal. I don't care anyway. But the body doesn't lie. The heart doesn't lie. The silence doesn't lie. And as you slowly stop craving them, they slowly start craving you. But they don't reach out. Not yet. Avoidants live in a constant war between longing and fear. When they miss you, the longing rises like a wave, but the fear crushes it before it reaches the shore. So instead of messaging you, they circle you. They check your profile. They watch your stories. They hover on your page without liking anything. They read your comments. They ask mutual friends about you in subtle, indirect ways. Anything to get a taste of your world without risking vulnerability. And when they see you're not posting about them, not sending signals, not searching for them, that's when the panic starts growing beneath the surface. Not the dramatic kind. Not the movie scene panic. This panic is quiet. Bone deep. The type that whispers in the back of their mind at 3 a.m. What if they're really done with me? What if they're moving on? What if someone else is giving them the safety I ran from? And this fear hits them harder because losing someone they took for granted wasn't part of their plan. Meanwhile, something entirely different is happening inside you. You're healing without noticing it. At first, you thought the silence meant abandonment. Now you realize it means space. Space from their inconsistent love. Space from their emotional shutdowns. Space from the feeling that you were always the only one fighting. You begin to return to yourself. You sleep better. You breathe deeper. You start remembering who you were before trying to love someone who doesn't know how to let love in. And that's when the power shifts completely. They're stuck in the cycle of fear. You're slowly breaking free from it. They're thinking about you more each day. You're thinking about them less. They're replaying moments. You're rewriting your identity. They're wondering if the silence means you stopped caring. It does. But they won't accept that truth yet. Not until the silence forces them to face everything they've been running from. And that moment is coming. As more time passes, the silence between you shifts from something passive into something powerful, almost alive. It stops being the absence of communication and becomes the presence of truth. And that truth is starting to whisper things the dismissive avoidant has avoided their entire life. Because silence forces them into a place they fear more than intimacy itself. Self-awareness. At first, they try to escape it the way they escape everything. Immersing themselves in work, distractions, meaningless interactions, superficial relationships. They'll go on dates where they feel nothing. Scroll endlessly to numb the discomfort. Pretend they're perfectly fine. But no distraction fills the space you used to fill. You didn't just give them attention. You gave them emotional safety, something they secretly crave but never admit. And now that feeling is gone. Late at night, when the noise dies down, the avoidant begins to feel the consequences of their own walls. Not regret. Yet. It's too early for regret. What they feel now is the first edge of emotional hunger. The kind they don't recognize because they've spent their entire life starving without knowing what it meant. Suddenly, they start rethinking everything. Did I sabotage something good? Why do I feel emptier now than before? Why didn't they reach out? Did they stop caring? Why does their silence hurt more than their presence? And there's a reason for this shift. Your silence steals the role they depended on. You were the one who tried. You were the one who cared. You were the one who reached across the emotional gap every single time. Without that steady effort from you, their emotional world collapses into a void they can't outrun. Avoidants survive relationships by believing two things. You will always want them. They can leave at any time and you will still be there. But now? Both illusions are breaking. Because despite everything you felt, everything you gave, everything you hoped, they can sense something in you has changed. Not anger. Not resentment. Detachment. And to someone with a dismissive avoidant attachment, detachment is the one thing they cannot control, manipulate, or soothe themselves against. This is when something unexpected happens inside you too. You start remembering the moments you lowered your standards just to fit their emotional limitations. You remember the times you tried to decode their silence, soothe their mood swings, fight for their attention, heal wounds you didn't create. You start seeing the pattern clearly, maybe for the first time. You weren't loved inconsistently. You were loving alone. And that realization hits you with a strange combination of grief and liberation. You weren't unworthy. They were unavailable. You weren't too much. They were too closed. And the love you wanted wasn't impossible. Just impossible with them in the state they were in. Meanwhile, the avoidant is spiraling deeper. They start imagining you meeting someone else. Someone emotionally stable. Someone who doesn't fear closeness. Someone who can offer what they couldn't. And that thought isn't just painful. It's shattering. Because now the silence doesn't feel like distance. It feels like losing something they didn't know they cared about until it slipped through their fingers. And as they sit there, replaying your last conversations, looking at your old messages, trying to pretend they're fine, something becomes clearer than ever. Your silence isn't a punishment. It's your healing. And their silence isn't strength. It's avoidance finally cracking. This is the turning point for both of you. And what happens next will change everything. As the silence stretches into weeks, something unexpected begins to take shape, not between you, but within both of you. For the dismissive avoidant, the silence becomes a slow form of exposure therapy. A confrontation they never wanted, but can't avoid. A spotlight shining directly on the wound they spent years pretending didn't exist. Avoidants survive through distance. Distance is their oxygen. Closeness is their suffocation. But now, with you gone completely quiet, they realize something terrifying. Distance is starting to feel suffocating too. They begin noticing the strange emptiness in places where you used to exist. The morning feels different without your good mood energy. Nights feel longer without your presence calming their storms. Their phone feels heavier every time they check it and see nothing from you. Avoidants don't fear losing people. They fear losing the option of people. And now that option is slipping. So the avoidant starts digging through old photos, rereading old messages, replaying moments in their head. Moments they dismissed. Moments they minimized. Moments that meant everything to you, and now haunt them because they realize they meant something to them too. They remember how safe they felt with you, even when they ran. How patient you were, even when they shut down. How you tried, even when their walls hurt you. And ironically, the very love they pushed away becomes the love they miss the most. But they're trapped inside themselves, wanting to reach out, terrified of reaching out, stuck between longing and pride. So instead of messaging you, they do what avoidants always do. They test. They drop hints. Passive signals. Breadcrumbs. A story view. An old photo like. An accidental click on your profile. A vague meme in your direction. A reaction to something they'd normally ignore. Not because they want to reconnect fully. Because they want to know if the rope between you is still attached. Meanwhile, your transformation is taking a completely different path. The silence no longer feels like waiting. It feels like awakening. You start realizing how much space their emotional inconsistency took up inside you. How you lived in a constant state of almost loved. Almost chosen. Almost enough. But almost is a slow kind of heartbreak. And now that the noise is gone, you're seeing yourself more clearly. You're noticing how deeply you used to overextend. How much you tried to earn affection they weren't capable of giving. How you mistook crumbs for a feast because your heart was starving. But silence has a way of reminding you that you deserve more. And as you reconnect with your own peace, something powerful happens. Your nervous system stops craving them. You stop checking your phone. You stop analyzing their behavior. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop needing a story where they magically change. Because you're changing instead. And that shift, that inner grounding, that emotional return to yourself, is something the avoidant feels on a level they can't logically explain. Avoidants sense detachment the way animals sense storms. When you emotionally step back, they feel the air change. They feel the silence differently. Heavier. Sharpened. Threatening. It's no longer the silence they controlled. It's the silence they can't escape. And suddenly, for the first time, they're not running from you. They're running from the possibility that you've finally found peace without them. Because the avoidant's greatest fear isn't intimacy. It's irrelevance. And right now, the silence is making them feel exactly that. But there is still one more shift coming. The one that will determine the truth of this connection once and for all. And neither of you are ready for what the silence is about to reveal next. As the silence enters its final stage, something irreversible begins to unfold. It's no longer about who reaches out first. It's about who has grown, who has awakened, and who is still hiding from themselves. For the dismissive avoidant, this silence becomes a mirror. A brutal, unforgiving reflection they can't turn away from. They start noticing patterns in themselves. The coldness they disguised as independence. The detachment they called strength. The emotional withdrawal they mistook for control. For the first time, they see the truth. They didn't avoid feelings. They avoided facing themselves. And the silence isn't just quiet anymore. It's accusatory. It forces them to re-experience every moment they shut you out. Every time they pulled away when you got too close. Every time you tried to love them and they responded with distance. Now that there's no message to ignore. No call to decline. No affection to reject. They feel the weight of their own emptiness. That's the quiet they truly fear. They replay your last conversations. The softness in your voice. The patience in your words. The small cracks in your heart you tried to hide. They see now how gently you held them. While they were too busy pushing you away. And this realization hits them like a cold wave. They weren't protecting themselves from you. They were protecting themselves from the love they didn't believe they deserved. But here's the irony. While they're drowning in the truth they avoided for years, you are rising. Your silence has become self-respect. Your distance has become healing. Your calm has become clarity. The person who once twisted in anxiety over their mixed signals now breathes freely without them. Where you used to wait, you now choose. Where you used to worry, you now understand. Where you used to chase, you now value your own energy far more. And this shift is what changes everything. Because avoiding someone who chases is easy. Avoiding someone who has outgrown you is terrifying. They feel it. The emotional cord they tugged for so long has gone slack. Your energy is no longer reaching for them. Your heart is no longer leaning forward. Your life is no longer orbiting around their unpredictability. And for the dismissive avoidant, this is the moment of panic. They realize that if they reach out now, it won't be to someone desperate for clarity. It will be to someone who has learned to live without them. The power dynamic flips for the final time. They used to run, confident you'd follow. Now they hesitate, afraid you'll keep walking. And here's the truth very few people are ready to hear. Avoidants don't come back because they suddenly become secure. They come back because the silence finally forces them to confront the one thing they fear more than intimacy. Losing someone who actually cared. They may send a casual message. A nostalgic one. A "Hey, remember when?" Or a simple, "I've been thinking about you." But this time, the message isn't about testing you. It's about revealing them. Because underneath their detached exterior lives a human being who has finally been brought to their knees by the one thing they underestimated. Your absence. And when that moment comes, you won't respond from the old version of yourself. The one who loved them more than yourself. You'll respond from your healed version. Your grounded version. Your self-respecting version. And in that moment, everything becomes clear. The silence didn't break either of you. It revealed you. It showed you the difference between longing and attachment. Between love and self-abandonment. Between chasing someone and choosing yourself. For you, silence became freedom. For them, silence became truth. And truth always comes with consequences. Some silences end in reunion. Some end in closure. Some end in transformation. But all of them end with this realization. When you both stop contacting each other, the universe stops protecting illusions and starts protecting your growth. That's what truly happens in the silence. It doesn't destroy love. It reveals which love was real and which one you needed to finally let go of.